Before I begin this video, I just want to say that this channel is closer than it's ever been to hitting 500 subscribers. So if you like the video, or even if you don't like the video, please consider dropping a subscription. I would really appreciate it. And also, major spoilers for The Last of Us Season 2 and Part 2 ahead. If you haven't played the game yet, I don't recommend playing it, but I am going to be spoiling parts of it. So The Last of Us Season 2 released, and I'll admit I'm more disappointed than I thought I would be. Let's jump right into it and talk about Bella Ramsey's portrayal as older Ellie. So from the very first scene in the show, we can already see why this is not going to work. Bella Ramsey as Ellie is fighting a man who is literally 3 times her size and getting her ass kicked. By the time the fight ends, Jesse walks in and confirms that the dude was holding back his punches. If you remember in the game, Ellie eventually fights the WLF, Washington Liberation Front, which is a highly trained military organization. If she is struggling to take down one guy in a one-on-one fight, what chance do you think she's going to have at killing trained armed soldiers? The suspension of disbelief that we're expected to have, that this version of Ellie is capable of taking out grown men and women, is just laughable at this point. Not to mention the fact that this version of Ellie is not mature at all. Canonically, it's been 5 years since the first game and Bella Ramsey still acts like a 14-year-old Ellie. She doesn't take her patrols seriously, she's rude to everybody and disrespectful, and she's constantly cracking jokes. I could give Bella Ramsey a pass if she at least tried to act like a more mature version of Ellie, but she's literally doing the exact same thing that she did in the first season, which worked very well when she portrayed a child. But you have to understand that this version of Ellie is supposed to be stoic and mature. Remember in the second game how Ellie is older and wiser and isn't cracking as many jokes and is taking life more seriously? That's the version of Ellie that is capable of taking on Abby and an entire militia, not Bella Ramsey. Her entire character just comes across as being like a whiny middle school brat, and she's not likable at all in the slightest. When you look at her on screen, you're just simply not intimidated, and Neil Druckman is trying to convince everybody that actors don't matter and the physical appearances don't matter. Yes, they absolutely do. The reason why Joel was such a badass in the first game was because he was a tall and strong man who was capable of overpowering and killing multiple armed men. I understand that Bella Ramsey is a good actress, and this is not me criticizing her at all. She actually did very well in the first show, but the reason why she did well is because she is good at portraying a child. She looks like a child, and in the show she acted like a child. You cannot take somebody who is 5'4" and put them in a role where they're supposed to be taller and older. It just does not work. Anyways, with Ellie aside, I kind of wanted to segue into talking about Abby. So we all knew that the actress who was going to play Abby was going to receive her fair share of criticism no matter how good she was at the role. They casted Caitlin Denver, who wanted to play the role of Ellie for multiple years and actually looks exactly like Ellie, but instead they decided to turn her into Abby. Now obviously if you've seen the show or if you just look up pictures online, Caitlin Denver is also weak and unimposing, which directly contrasts Abby from the game. In the game, Abby is strong, muscular, and is able to take down people with ease, and it's a significant reflection of her character. The trauma that Abby experienced from seeing her father's body caused her to work out obsessively in order to gain the size and muscle that she would need to take on Joel in the future. Obviously the reason why they decided to cast Caitlin Denver as Abby is because they knew that a muscular woman would be too much of a challenge for Bella Ramsey to realistically handle in the show. If they hired a woman who was muscular, she would be able to take down this version of Ellie with ease. So the directors decided that they needed to cast somebody who was equal to her in weight for it to be a more believable and realistic fight. So in case you couldn't tell, there's a bit of a pattern going on here. Both of these actresses are weak and physically unimposing in nature, yet we are expected to believe that they are both capable of taking on infected and armed men and themselves later on in the show. This is like a fantasy project that Neil is working on here, where we're all supposed to suspend our disbelief and accept realities that simply aren't there, which leads me to Joel. Now, if you remember, the Joel in the show and in the game is a badass man who has been fighting for his life and survival for 30 plus years alongside his brother Tommy. When I saw the actress playing Abby, I was thinking to myself, how could this woman possibly get the upper hand and beat Joel in either a fight or in a gunfight? And then I saw what they were doing in the show and it all made sense. From the very first scene with Joel in season 2, he looks significantly older. I don't know if they did AI or makeup or whatever, but he looks very old, which is surprising because it's only been 5 years since the first game. The directors are also portraying him as a much weaker, emotional man. There's a scene that keeps getting talked about which really bothered me, showing Joel go to therapy. Now, if you know anything about Joel from either the first season of the show or from the game, Joel is the kind of man who would never get therapy under any circumstances. He survived the most insane, traumatizing experiences anyone could ever go through, and he's still standing. But of course, course, Neil Cuckman understands that if they pussify Joel, then they can justify him dying to Abby later on in the show. If he's seen as a weak, frail, old man, then obviously it's more plausible that he would die to a physically unimposing woman instead of a roided out, jacked up Abby. So anyways, that's pretty much my 2 cents on the first episode of the show. I'm already extremely underwhelmed and disappointed. I'm disappointed that the casting is so terrible and that they couldn't just get an actual muscular woman to play Abby, which I'm sure there are thousands of women willing and able to fulfill that role adequately. I'm disappointed that Bella Ramsey is still Ellie and doesn't act mature at all and just is not convincing enough to be an older version of Ellie. And I'm also disappointed that they're already character assassinating Pedro Pascal's Joel in order to justify him dying later on in the show. I knew watching the trailer that this was going to be a one-on-one verbatim retelling of the second game, which is incredibly upsetting and disappointing, but Neil Cuckman is such a narcissist that he can't admit that he failed in the game. He had a perfectly good chance here of redeeming himself by tweaking the show a lot and making the writing better and making Joel have a more understandable and purposeful death. But no, I'm sure there's going to be a scene in the next episode where Caitlin Denver is bashing his head repeatedly with a golf club, even though she doesn't look like she's physically capable of picking up a golf club. The only casting that the show got right was Jesse and Dina. Dina is very funny and charismatic, and Jesse is a G. So I'm glad that those actors and actresses are actually good. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and road to 500 subscribers.